Okay, well, let's dive in, guys. Welcome. This is in an ongoing series of webinars that we've been doing at CX Effect, a lot of it driven by AI and a bunch of amazing innovations that are happening in that space. And I'm really excited to bring into our latest conversation here the founder and CEO of XSELL Technologies, Matt Coughlin. Matt, it's good to see you, my friend.
Andrew, great to see you as always. Excited to be here.
I've really enjoyed our conversations recently. It's an amazing time we live in right now, Matt. The level or the pace of innovation around AI right now is pretty mind blowing. And specifically, all the buzz around ChatGPT and contact center leaders trying to figure out how all that plays into their strategy and how they leverage that. And there's a lot of noise and frankly some confusion. And I love what you guys are doing to bring clarity to this conversation, and I'm excited about diving into that. Matt, let's kick this off if we could. I know you got some slides that we want you to take us through as kind of as an intro into what XSELL is doing. But while we're bringing that up, give me a quick overview, Matt, of kind of your personal background. I've enjoyed hearing that. Talk about that for a moment.
You got it, Andrew. In the context of just giving you a little bit about my background, I also think it is one of the things that's fairly unique about our business. So if you think about my background and my partner Mark Storr's background, I like to think of us as chocolate and peanut butter, two great tastes, but better together, right? As Reese's would say. I spent the majority of my career really as an operator, and prior to this, I had worked in private equity. I was the number 2 in one of the operating companies where essentially we were bringing to life the sales and service experience for large brands. I had 28,000 people on my team. So if you think of Apple or Disney or Walgreens or AT&T or Verizon or GE or AIG or Home Depot, there's a strong likelihood if you're talking to one of those companies, you were talking to one of my people. So I came from an operator's background, and much of what you're going to hear and see, I think will resonate with those business leaders that are on. Mark Storr, my partner and co-founder, was getting his PhD at the University of Chicago when he and I met. Just a really disproportionate, very, very sharp technologist. He had worked at Google Home, was hired by Amazon about a year in advance of his PhD to go work on the Echo. And so the two of us really have put together kind of our best experiences to drive the solution we're going to talk about and kind of the experiences that we're seeing in the marketplace that you're going to hear about today.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Well, excited about that. Take us through a few slides here to kind of set the stage for our conversation. Your insight into kind of the current challenges of CX leaders is really interesting and intriguing. So I'm excited to have you take them through this. Why don't you kick that off?
Happy to. So, Andrew, when I think about it, you'd have to be living under a rock to not understand just the sheer pace of change that's going on right now. I think, rarely in our careers have we been engaged in something that is being talked about on the Tonight Show, but like ChatGPT, right? But the point is, it's really interesting times. I think what's difficult for business leaders right now is you're probably being asked frequently, what is the implication of this to our business? All of the innovation that's coming out, it's great, it's neat, it's interesting, but also I'm faced with the reality that we're in some somewhat challenging times. What are the implications of all this innovation in our business? And, if I took a step back, I just want to kind of review what it is that we're talking about. When you think about the contact center space itself, Daniel O'Connell from Gartner had gone through and done some research in 2022 where he kind of described that 95% of this very large, kind of area from a P&L perspective is essentially focused on the personnel, the people that are actually doing the work. And 5% of it, only 5% of it is really availed in ways that, what you're going to do to kind of change that dynamic. And so this is, when I talk to you about my experience, it's very interesting, Andrew, because this is exactly what I was dealing with 28,000 agents that were working from home from 2005 through 2012, is that I was just seeing what seemed like a hamster wheel in terms of not really having the ability to go out and create sustainable solutions that would help me resolve some of these kind of perpetually occurring challenges. So the first thing that I would just say is, grounding ourselves in the fact that when you think about the contact center space in general, it's a necessity that we have to innovate here, because I think if we just look at this, we know that the current way that we're doing it tends to lean towards being unsustainable, right? There's organizations that I would talk to where they would say, hey, if I'm being very honest with myself, whether it's forced attrition or whether it's involuntary attrition, but if I just look at the entire number, I could be somewhere around 100% attrition annually. And so for us as business leaders, I looked at and wanted to focus on what we could do that would materially change that reality and what would actually improve it. And what I had concluded. Go ahead, Andrew.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. What I had concluded is really there was this fundamental understanding that I was seeing, where 80% of my contact center's results were being derived by a very small portion of the workforce. And it was in sales and in service, right? Not only was 80% of the results being derived by a small composition of the workforce, here's the, I think, even more confounding situation. 80% of my management's time, energy, effort was being consumed by this highly transient portion of the workforce that was, going through my recruiting and training and certification process, going through the nesting. And then within that first 90 to 120 days, kind of either opting in or opting out based on whether they thought they could do the job. And so for me, that reality in and of itself was one that I thought was worthy of us just first of all looking at and understanding, but then thinking about how can we go out and immediately create impact in the business by being able to learn what top performers were doing and make it available to everybody else. So that was kind of the kernel or the origin of the business when we started it. And it's why, Mark and I back in 2016 started our patents, which we now own the patent on real-time agent assist based on what best agents are doing. So I'll stop there, Andrew, and just see if that explanation makes sense before we jump into a little bit more of what we're doing.
Yeah, no, it totally does. I think the problem that you articulate there is super important, Matt. This we're hearing outrageous attrition numbers from many of our clients, and it's an incredible struggle. The labor challenge alone, it's funny. A year ago, I couldn't hire agents because I couldn't find them. Right, I couldn't attract them. And today, while that's still a problem, it's now being exacerbated by a lot of companies because of the macroeconomic conditions are saying cut costs, right? So now you got to do this with even less agents. And so if you can find them, great, but I'm not going to let you hire them. So it's creating this big labor gap, right? And if you combine that problem with the attrition numbers you're talking about and the time to proficiency,
that's right,
around how long it takes to get an agent to full proficiency, you're constantly chasing yourself, right? And that is a massive issue. I love how you guys have addressed that. So I think you set the problem up perfectly.
Well, good. And I think what I want to make sure that everybody understands as we talk through this right now is, there's a lot of noise in the marketplace around, what might be perceived as fragile results. Just setting the stage. We recently had a Fortune 50 client's internal audit team do an evaluation. And what they concluded was that deploying a solution that learns what the very best people do and making it available to everybody else generated $130 million of net contribution margin, right? So here's the thing, Andrew, I think having been a practitioner, having been an operator, there's been a promise for a decade around what could be done to reimagine the workspace, what could be done to, the term digital transformation has been thrown around a lot. And I think by and large, it's really represented, moving to the cloud from a telephony perspective. But we're at this really special moment right now in time where you can really start to think about reimagining the work, not just where it's done. Yes, it's special when we can do things at home. And like I said, I had a 28,000 person at-home workforce. in 2012. That is special. But more importantly, though, when you think about that 5% of the cost, imagine being to unlock or unleash an awful lot more investment to really reimagine your workspace and reimagine how the work is getting done. And that's partially what we're going to talk through today. So I'm excited for the conversation. I think we've got a couple of really pragmatic ways to think about it. So,
excellent. Great.
Listen, when you think about the business, the first thing that I would tell you is, there's this scenario where inside of an enterprise, there's certain people who are doing certain things really well, right? But very rarely has an organization had the opportunity to essentially harvest the collective intelligence of the enterprise. So imagine, Andrew, if all of the people who had joined us today were part of a single team, it would stand to reason that some people do one interaction really well and other people do another interaction really well. Very rarely have we had this sense and respond architecture and this ability to kind of learn at scale exactly what people are doing that causes the outcome to be more likely. So the first thing that our solutions are able to do is listen across the enterprise to learn what are those actions, tactics, strategies, the tacit knowledge that our best people are using in each scenario. And then we're able to organize that information into what we call an expert ontology. But the very simple way to think about that, Andrew, is now that you've captured all of these, brilliant scenarios, you have to know exactly where and when and how they apply in a conversation. What's really exciting about that, though, is at that moment, I think it kind of unleashes a fundamentally new set of opportunities. So now that you've captured the information, you know where it applies. In real time, you can start to make that information available to every one of your agents, right? So if you think about that now, each agent is now able to essentially get that real-time augmentation of what would the best agent have done. So let me give you one example of this. For a Fortune 10 organization, what we know is the likelihood of conversion would drop by 27% at the existence of a single objection. When two objections co-occurred in the conversation, the likelihood of conversion would drop below 60%. However, in the enterprise, right? That's like first of all, just knowing that, right? Imagine, anecdotally, people have an idea, but they've never had the empirical understanding of what's the impact or the implication of something. But imagine inside of that, there were some people inside of the enterprise who had honed their rebuttal where they were overcoming that at 280% better than their peers. So now you have this chance to promote that to everybody, right? I think that's the thing that's so exciting is that not only have you been able to harvest this collective intelligence, not only do you know what these disproportionate and highly influential ways of gaining resolution or achieving a really efficient and effective outcome are, but now you can actually start to make that available to every agent in the moment when they're having the conversation. That's
so powerful. Yeah, no, it's super powerful. So, I mean, in very simple terms, there's an objection that's voiced on a regular basis in our contact center. Sally has a better conversion rate than anybody else on the team by a factor of 10 or whatever, right? It's a huge advantage that she has. I can take exactly the verbiage, the tone, what she is saying, and put that in front of Joe, who's actually not very good at this, and now raise his bar immediately. Am I correct?
It's exactly right. Not only can you do that, but imagine that the way that you make the recommendation to the individual is catered to the way that they're going to receive it. So it could be that I'm a tenured representative, and you're giving me the new secret to the test or the answer to the test. It might just be that simple nudge, the words that work, the key phrases, the right way of thinking about it. Now, when and we're going to talk through this in just a moment, but when we've seen a dramatic reshaping of the P&L, where we've seen that is our ability to dramatically improve the proficiency curve. So now you've got that new agent, they come out, not only are they have this ombudsman, this coach that's working with them, that's helping them, but it's the detailed heuristics. You know, oftentimes you can imagine there's an awful lot of anxiety when you've gone through 6 weeks of training or 8 weeks of training. You get to the floor. Wow, you know, you're sitting there, and the one thing that you're thinking about is, you know, I've never done this. I don't know what was most important about my training. And now you're, you know, front and center in a conversation. Now, just imagine that you've got that coach. And, you know, I love, there's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he really talks about what are the key attributes to outperformance. And he's distilled it down to a couple of really important ones. It's this notion of access to mentorship. So can I get access to someone who's going to help me understand what are the most important and critical things to know? But it's also this idea of repetitions, right? You know, kind of 10,000 hours is the way that he characterizes it in the context of how do you create outlier performance. The only issue with that, Andrew, is that oftentimes representatives get out onto the floor and they really never get the repetitions to become very good. And they start this negative flywheel. So what we've been able to do is dramatically change that so that they're getting much better outcomes very early through that mentorship and that coaching on a perpetual basis. And then we start to see this flywheel of high performance where they start to do much better because the combination of that mentorship and the repetitions. So that's one thing that we just see is really exciting. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like inside of the business as well.
Good. I love it. Let's go.
So listen, to ground everybody on how we do it, the first thing I just wanted to do is kind of acknowledge what the platform itself is doing. And as I mentioned, the first thing that we're doing is we're essentially identifying what are all these disproportionate strategies that the top performers are doing. We're organizing and understanding those so that we know exactly where and when they apply. And then in real time, sub 50 milliseconds, we're listening to the conversation and we're making that information available to the representative on their desktop so that they now have this guided experience. It could be something that gives me the detailed discovery question, as well as giving me the exact knowledge management article that's most likely going to be used by the top performer in that scenario. And so now what I've got, I haven't moved my hands. I haven't done anything, right? Andrew, I just had the conversation, but immediately I'm starting to be availed. Here's the information you're most likely going to need. And then in addition to it, here's exactly what the right way to respond to that inquiry is. And that's going to change dynamically as we go through the conversation. So that's just kind of the grounding in the context around what's happening in that agent experience. Here's where it's exciting, Andrew. And this is where I think everybody kind of, if you've spent a good portion of your career, this is a reality you are intimately familiar with. So I'm just going to kind of draw your attention to the proficiency curve where you see the milestones that are highlighted. So right here, what we're identifying is that there's a 90-day proficiency curve in an organization. That 90-day proficiency curve, or just over 90 days, essentially is where an awful lot of the attrition will occur. So as we talked about earlier, representative comes out of the training, they've got 6 or 8 weeks worth of information in their head. Now they're sitting there, they might be in some nesting, but this is where they very quickly go, I am so unnerved that I don't think I can do this job and I opt out of it. Or, hey, you know what? I feel like I can do this. That decision's made very early on. Now they might not leave for 6 or 8 weeks. And this is where we're going to talk about a very important concept, which I would, we're terming performance leakage. Okay. But think about this. Inside of each of these businesses, if you were able to simply curve the proficiency curve such that you can get people ready in 20% of the time, all of that darker orange there is essentially results that are going to be captured. And that's how what we've seen is a rebaselining. If you look at that blue line that's going across there, Andrew, that's the historical performance of the organization. So I'll walk you through this just in terms of very simple math. As you can see here by the stats, there's a significant portion of the workforce that is perpetually in the proficiency curve. I think all of us have known that, right? And I think all of us have a good idea of what the cost of that is, right? We would say, hey, I've got 80% attrition annually. at $6,000 to $13,000 per agent, that's costing me X. However, most organizations are not saying, well, wait a minute, what is the results leakage or the performance leakage that it's costing me when I have that portion of my workforce that's in the proficiency curve? So if you think about this scenario, milestone A, the goal, you are only a quarter of the way to the goal. When you get to milestone B, obviously now you're about halfway to the goal, but you've engaged with and interacted with an awful lot of the most precious thing that the company has, their customers. So the customers are engaging with people that by definition, inside of our model, we know and understand are going to underperform in that scenario. So we really focused a lot of our effort, Andrew, on the support and the enablement of agents early in the process. And what we saw was a dramatic impact to attrition, but also we saw people start to get those key outlier attributes. They're getting the mentorship around what's the right thing to do, and they're getting the repetitions and building the muscle. So this was an exciting breakthrough. I have to tell you, the financial implications of this are very exciting, because not only are you reducing that cost, that is, the churn of agents, but in addition to that, you're recapturing the performance that they would have been engaged in.
And that can be a massive number for a lot of businesses. We had a conversation, you and I, recently, where you were talking about kind of this concept with a CFO, and it was the comment that struck me that are you aware that there's somebody in your business right now that has it modeled out in the spreadsheet that you're going to underserve 30% of your customers, and that's part of the plan, right? Almost a third of your customers are going to be underserved, and we're accepting that reality as part of the staffing plan, right? Most business leaders aren't thinking about it that way.
No, I mean, listen, Andrew, and for good reason. I mean, in their defense, we've never really had the technology and the innovation, and this is where I wanted to make sure that we're drawing these distinctions around, Chat GPT and other things, right? If you think about Sebastian Thrun, the guy who was behind Google's self-driving car, I think we were all supposed to be the entire fleet worldwide was going to be autonomous by now, right? You wouldn't see any people driving cars. The fact of the matter is, those types of statements, although they're interesting, they don't help the people who are actually doing the work today understand what are the specific milestones of achievement that the innovation can allow me to build so that we can get to some of that material change. So with that in mind, the reason why that assumption is in that spreadsheet is we've never really had the technology available. But here's what we're seeing. 4 of the 5 largest payers on the planet use our technology to dramatically improve agent attrition, which is unlocking that performance, right? These are the steps that people can say, wait a minute, I can go start to deploy this technology immediately with a set of realistic expectation on results that are going to build over time versus, agents will be a thing of the past by the year 2026, right? Statements like this, I think, they don't provide the framework of achievement and the framework of results that help people get to those future years and those future opportunities.
Yeah, really interesting. Great. Let's keep going here. This is great stuff.
Yeah. So Andrew, but here's the thing that I think is so exciting about this, right? If I were to take this, and it's great, I actually happen to have one of the CX Effect partners here in the office today. We're meeting with them in person, and we were having this conversation, and I said, listen, the thing that we are responsible for, the thing that we have to think about is this idea that not only can we deliver highly dependable results that you can count on in 90-day windows, but in addition to that, though, we're starting to build this labeled data set that will allow you to reimagine how the work is done. So think about a P&L, and this is kind of my experience personally. I would sit and say, man, I've got an awful lot of my capital and my resource tied to things like compliance. Are we in Q&A? Are we listening to enough conversations to see if we've met the standards? I've got an awful lot of my investment tied to performance management and coaching, where we're going to do 2 agent coaching sessions per agent per week. Sometimes I had great attribution models to that. Sometimes I did not. And then, agent attrition and all of these things. I think where it gets very exciting, Andrew, is when you see this interplay between the human and the machine, where the human is getting a lot of that reinforcement in real time. So imagine now the machine's letting me know in real time I've met the compliance requirement. The machine is letting me know in real time that I've done the things that my coaching session or my coach would have told me are required. It's letting me know that I'm doing that in real time. All of these represent a significant shift in the way the work is done, such that we're unlocking and unleashing that capital to go invest in things that represent a better experience for the customer versus maintaining the status quo.
Yep. Got it.
So
we got a question here, and I want to encourage the audience here. If you have questions, pop it into the chat. We'll make sure those are fielded as we go. One thing that was just asked is this deployed in kind of an over-the-top fashion, right? Your tool set in the context of perhaps the single pane of glass that an agent lives in.
Absolutely. I mean, the 2 things that I would point to, Andrew, is first and foremost, what we've focused on is creating value to those existing investments that you've made. So whether you've got Five9 or NICE or Genesis telephony environment, whether you've got the Nuance chat platform, the largest companies on the planet have decided that we want to create technology, or we want technology that wraps around that environment and simply creates value in that environment. So we don't rip or replace any of that technology. We simply wrap around it and provide the cognitive capability on top of it.
What's also really important about that is whether you're prem-based or cloud-based, it also doesn't matter, right? You can bolt on to whatever contact center platform the customer is using today.
Yeah, you can imagine. I mean, there's scenarios where people might have really, really difficult requirements around redaction on-prem and things of that nature that we've been able to meet and overcome. And so that way, you have to meet the customer where they're at in terms of what the requirements are. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, I love it. So that was from Gary. Gary, let me know if you have any more color on that you'd like. But I think that answers the question. That's great. The slide you got up here, I think one of the things that I've always been impressed with is the credibility you guys have around this conversation, right? The group of luminaries that you've surrounded yourself with that have amazing insights into where this is going next, and the customers. I mean, the logos that have already trusted XSELL with this technology is really impressive. Talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have the largest implementations on the planet with very strong success use cases. So if you were to look at it for the top 5 payers on the planet use it, the largest telcos here and in other continents are using it. So whether it's financial services, insurance, telco, healthcare obviously is a huge space for us, retail. What we've been able to do is really hone in on those specific use cases that have disproportionate value back to the business. In other words, Andrew, when I was looking at this technology, what I had concluded is that there were people who are coming out of great schools, great academic environments, and essentially they were like a hammer looking for a nail. Where can I go apply this? And I think what's unique about our business is that it's a blend of brilliant technologists, but with practitioners that understand where these use cases that have the most immediate and material impact on the business exist. And so that's where we've focused our time. And that's why you're seeing, I hadn't seen very many scenarios where an internal audit organization from a company would come back and say, hey, this is $130 million of net contribution margin. That's fantastic, right? Oftentimes, that they're the ones challenging the investment.
Yes, no doubt. You have a lot of focus, I know, on larger companies, big deployments. We've got some great referenceable clients that you can point to. Give us a sense of how this scales down into kind of the medium enterprise. Where does this become cost effective and smart for businesses? What's too small for you guys?
It could be the Midwest sensibility, right, Andrew? We're a Chicago-based company, but here's the way that we approached this from day one. We wanted to challenge ourselves to be able to produce and work with the largest, most sophisticated and demanding clients. And so what that did is it created a very high bar in terms of what you had to do. ISO 27001 certification, SOC 2, all of the things that are essentially right to play. Let's go do those things, but also let's get what I would call unambiguous, undeniable, undisputable results. What's occurred in that is we've gone through an evolutionary process where we've been challenged over the years. We've improved, and you can imagine those clients, they have a tendency to be able to get you to go further, faster than you might have even thought you could. Here's why it's important for this next chapter for us. What we've now built out is highly dependable, highly predictable platform that can go down market to as little as 100 agents in a contact center, right? If you've got 100 agents in a contact center, even some lower than that, we've got use cases where it's bright and clear how this will generate returns at 65 people. But the reason why I bring this up is that I think a lot of the stuff that's out there today in the marketplace, it's trying to go up. And what it's going to continuously bump into is this expectation of what's the next group of people going to want. I think for us, although it was, my hair was, I had a full head of jet black hair when I started this, but I think part of this was, I did want to challenge us to say, let's go create the results with the hardest and most demanding clients and then bring it to a broader audience. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, good. So I think that's a really important point. You got a 100-seat contact center. This technology is not out of reach. It can still have a massive impact on your business, and the ROI is still compelling. There's a question here about AI and how AI is being deployed to handle a lot of mundane routine tasks in a contact center, right? Yeah. Is your solution really designed to help the agent on the complex? Because that's if this is being deployed, right? If we're leveraging AI, automation and containment on the front end and doing a good job of that, really it only leaves the really complex conversations for the pool of agents, right? And that's where your solution really shines.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, Andrew, here, and this is why I think it's really important to kind of to draw this connection. If you think about automation and augmentation is the ability to augment a human being with exactly the things that are going to allow them to achieve the best possible outcome with the customer in the most efficient and effective manner, right? So it's all about the efficacy of the person being very good at what they're doing and being really well equipped. For those rote tasks, you're going to see more of that automation. That's not really where we focus a lot of our effort. We're oftentimes feeding those automation tools additional information. Now, where I will tell you, there is a really exciting frontier that I could not be more pumped about is this idea of what we call robots and cobots. So imagine the combination of robotic process automation, where we for a large publicly traded BPO, we deployed our technology that tracked the agents, and what we found is that over 30% of the time, representatives had anchored themselves in the wrong screen to effectively resolve or achieve the outcome. So just think about that. Over 30% of the time, they were in the wrong screen. So now imagine this ombudsman experience or this coach experience where not only, I haven't moved my hands again, not only have I started to get information about exactly what to do and say in this conversation, but it's giving me the exact screen I'm supposed to be in. It's launching me into the exact environment that I'm supposed to do the work in. And so this is where I think you're going to get this symbiotic relationship between the humans and the machines that still allows you to draw an empathetic and authentic relationship with the customer, right? I think that's the one thing that everybody's still sitting here assessing is, yes, you can automate as much as you want, but how many frontiers do you still have to create an authentic, elastic relationship with your customer, right? And that's the piece where I think people are starting to say, you know what, I can race to the least costs But where do I go from there? Just, then I'm left with only a few things to compete on, like price of my own product. I think there's this, and I'll tell you, one of the great examples of that, I think in our time, has been Best Buy. Many people had Amazon putting Best Buy out of business. And interestingly enough, my sister sat on the board of Best Buy for many years, and she would tell you that every seminal chapter of value creation was tied to access to expertise. The blue shirts, when they outscaled that, it became the Geek Squad. Then they outscaled that. So the thing that's interesting about that, Andrew, is I think we have some really good success beacons around what it means to have a great connection with your customer where you want to talk to them, right? And I think those are going to be the responsibility of great business leaders, will be to identify and define what those experiences look like, create those journeys that it's very clear when you want to engage and how you want to engage to best meet their needs.
Yeah. You showed me something recently. If we think about kind of what's on the horizon for you guys, right? You talk about robots and cobots. I think that use case is fascinating. The other one that's really fascinating to me is connecting to experts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And using your engine to identify who the experts are on this particular product or service or question, and getting allowing customers to connect directly to those people that are most skilled to answer their question. Talk a little bit about that, the vision around that.
Yeah, I mean, when you just think about the dilemma that we've had, which is it's very hard to scale for all the reasons that we just talked about, attrition and everything else. It's hard to scale expertise. So what that's left us doing is hiding, ways to engage with the brand behind, you might have to click 3 or 4 screens in to get to an 800 number to figure out how you're going to talk to the brand. One of the most important artifacts that all companies should be thinking about is what is the labeled data set of expertise for your particular brand? Because what that means, Andrew, is then I can actually start to move further forward in the experience, ways to engage with expertise on my brand, my particular brand. So the thing that's really interesting about AI in general is it's going to avail all kinds of new CX that we can have frictionless access to experts. I used to love, there used to be, kind of back when we saw the proliferation around high-speed data, someone walked into this old hotel and they asked the person, does it have cable? And it said every movie ever made, anytime, right? This is the type of experience customers are expecting, which is, do I have a way to get a hold of an expert at any time on your brand? And that person, the only way that that's going to be achievable is that person has to be augmented with AI to help them deliver that experience.
Yeah. And to your point, if you can do that, now you can move that expert access to that expert further up in the process, right? That's right. Even launched from a company's website, right? That where the very first place I'm going to kind of poke around for support or help or answers, maybe even be able to connect to an expert right at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew, let me give you an example. I mean, the dilemma for the customer is you don't even know what you don't know, right? So you could be embarking on a very expensive interaction, a mortgage, a car loan, an MRI, right? Whatever it is. And you don't even know if the question that you have is a legitimate question. And companies have made it, you have to put in your email, all of your children's name and date of birth. I say that jokingly, but they've created these hurdles. And what I would say is, what we want to do is make it frictionless and simple to get access to an expert, because that's the first place to create that trust between the company and the customer, right? And this is such an important notion, which is, what are the things that you intend to win with, right? If you have a transaction engine that's better than Amazon, go compete on transactions. But if what you're going to try and win on is your relationship with the customer, you have to really be thinking and challenging yourself around, what are we doing that's different that makes it easier for our customer to get a hold of us, that we want them to come to us with the simplest questions so that we can help them with it, right? All of that's pretty important for one reason now, Andrew. This is I think that the kind of point in time they're at. Imagine now you have this sense and respond architecture that's listening to every customer conversation, synthesizing that, and using it to inform all parts of your business. So Merchandising. Do you know that these 3 product categories, they're asking for this specific feature with empirical evidence? Promotions and promotions management. Do you know that when we ran that campaign, the single most talked about request was this when people bought or did not buy, right? All of this really allows you to now start taking the voice of the customer synthesized around your enterprise and going and taking action that materially improves it.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that.
I'm not passionate about this.
We got a question,
right, Andrew? You could tell I kind of eat, sleep, and drink this because I've so.
Yeah, I know. It's great. I wish you were more knowledgeable about this stuff. I love it. It's great conversation. There's a question asked here about government. You're doing a lot in healthcare and financial services and retail, a bunch of different places like that. Any success so far in kind of state, local government, federal government, those types of projects?
No, Andrew.
What's your?
Yeah, but here's my feeling on that. First and foremost, I would tell you, I think it's a absolutely perfect application of the technology. When you think about the state and local governments, they are under lots of duress just with the amount of change that's been going on, whether it be from the pandemic, the process and protocol change. And so one of the things that I would tell you is it's a great application of the technology. It simply has not been an area where we've focused initially, but certainly it would be one that I would want to go have those conversations with the right partners.
Yeah, good. And I know we've got a number of people in our ecosystem that do a lot in that space. What is your another good question that's been asked here? How do you see your solution being complemented by some of the work that's going on around generative AI and knowledge orchestration? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, great example of this. I met with Pete at AppEdge, and the first thing that you have to be looking at, Andrew, is whatever the partner is that you choose to work with, are they open and are they interested in creating the ecosystem that allows you as a client to get the value as fast as possible, right? So I would tell you, yes. We've all run into this, closed ecosystems where it's like, hey, you got to wait for ours to come out. I think in the spirit of speed to value for our clients, we're going to be working with partners like that to, kind of get this reimagined workspace in place as fast as possible, right? So those types of partners like that. So imagine, what we've done is we've indexed the entire knowledge management, environment using AppEdge. And not only am I giving you the exact talking points of how to handle that conversation, but I've gone to the specific spot inside of that knowledge management article, which is what Pete and I have talked about, and we're surfacing you that content specifically. Yeah. Right? You're not going to have to go read through it to find it. You've got it right at the tip of your finger, ready to go.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge right now with a lot of knowledge management kind of orchestration, and you guys play into this, right? Is this idea that an agent's asking a question and it comes back with 5 articles that I'm supposed to read through and poke through to find the answer while the customer's on hold, right? While the customer's waiting for that answer. And it's just such an archaic way to do it. It's exciting to be able to give them that real-time coaching and get to that answer immediately. I mean, that's such a powerful and compelling thing.
Well, keep in mind, like everything that you think about when we're doing this, and I'm going to give my good friend Vic Pepe a footnote here. Vic and I have been spending time together, but all of these things represent performance leakage. And Vic said, Matt, we've got to look at and identify every opportunity where we can recapture that performance for the clients so that they're actually getting the most benefit. So as I kind of hear you describe that around knowledge management or any one of these other applications, think about it in the context of how much performance leakage does this represent today for my business, and how fast can I close that gap?
Yes, for sure. I love the concept of performance leakage, results leakage. I mean, that's a number I think that people haven't been considering when they look at what is the total ROI on a project like this, right? That can be such a massive number. related to the kind of the ROI calculation is a lot around churn. And I'm curious if you can talk about that. I know that the traditional agent model, where I'm sitting in a contact center, I grew up in that space. I know you did as well. I think my first job in the contact center space was 13 years old, selling the newspaper over the telephone in a boiler room operation filled with smoke. Right. So that's where I came from. But that job for an agent, getting all these complex calls, having to go find answers, it's not a fun job. It can be highly frustrating. There are reasons why people don't last long in that role. And when you make this much, much easier, much more fulfilling, if you will, for an agent in those interactions, what's the impact it's having on churn?
Oh, I mean, listen, Andrew, this is where it gets, and I think I told you, hopefully it's landing, that I really do come at it from we can materially improve the life of agents, right? Here's what I would tell you. The first thing is the impact that's going to have on agents is around their well-being. The anxiety level goes down dramatically. However, where we're at now, what we've deployed is real-time games. So imagine work and joy, two things that were mutually exclusive, right? I'm either at work or I'm having fun, right? That's how the contact center's been. But imagine now that literally by doing the things that we know are good, you can start to build streaks like Duolingo or Snapchat. Imagine doing the things that we know are the right things. You can build streaks and try and keep your streak going. Or imagine now that I get my trivia question because I've gotten 4 in a row, and now I'm competing. Right? Listen, I think, Andrew, one of our responsibilities is to think about the application of the technology that's available to materially improve lives, and that's this next chapter that we're all going to write together. I think is going to be one that makes the job much more sustainable. It makes the job much more fun, and it really focuses on something that we can build on for the future.
No question. I think it also goes back to something else that you and I have talked about in the past, which is, I just mentioned I got my start in the contact center as a kid. My first job in kind of a corporate contact center was at MCI, the long distance phone company, and I was in residential customer service. And when you look at the types of companies that in their history, they used to require that senior executives came from the very, very kind of entry level jobs of the business, right? And a lot of that has been kind of arbitraged out of the equation, right? In recent years. Talk about that real quick, and how could this potentially be a way to reset that, right?
It's so important. I mean, when you think about, I'm blessed to have a luminary like Frank Jules on my board, or Mary Tolan. These people, you had to start at the entry level positions and then work your way up. But the thing that was so important about that is you really began to know, understand, and become very familiar with all parts of the business, right? Not just one part of the business, but you had to learn all parts of the business. If you were going to be the CEO of UPS, you had to have driven the truck. Why, Andrew? Because they wanted you to understand the business. If you were a CEO at Walgreens, you had to have come from the pharmacy so that you knew the business. Here's the thing about that, right? Is there is nothing that you can come up with that will take the place of dealing with thousands of customers. Having that foundational understanding of why people love our brand and what things represent a challenge to our relationship between our brand and our customer. You build that. So here's the thing that's about that. Most of the innovation, and like I said, I had 28,000 at-home agents. Most of the innovation that's occurred has been around deploying in different geographies, doing, how can I spin up a team fast here or there? This next chapter is really around how do I actually drive the efficacy to build this competency in my own, of people that know and understand my brand at scale. And so I think that's a pretty exciting one. Imagine now that you're going to have people that instead of coming in and working for 90 days and then quitting, they're going to get supported and they're going to start building that competency, and they're going to get the 10,000 hours or the 10,000 repetitions that allows them to know your brand. So when you need that new opening in another spot, you've got a really capable person that you can bring there.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. The bar is being reset on where agents can get to from a knowledge and efficacy perspective, and really what you're building is kind of the super agent in that situation, right? And if I'm a super agent, heck, I enjoy my job, right? And the enjoyment of that makes me even that much more effective.
Yeah, listen, I think any of us who are Marvel fans and watched Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr., right? There's this unbelievably charismatic human part of that interaction, but there's also just this sheer awe of what he's able to do as Iron Man, right? And I think when we think about what the future looks like, I think there is this opportunity for the human and the machine to create these unbelievably authentic but knowledgeable experiences for the customer. I've got all the things that I need to deliver the right answer, and I know how to actually make that human connection.
Yeah, I love it. And we just have a few minutes left. Time for a couple more questions if they come in, but let's get really practical here. You have a company that's listening on this, is interested, is wanting to learn more. Give us a sense of what an onboarding process looks like for a client. How do you do kind of requirements gathering, pilots? How do you deploy this? The time frame? Give us some practical sense of that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that we do, Andrew, is obviously we'll come out and sit down and do a full presentation so that the person can say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is this a good fit for my business? Yeah. If in fact it is, we want to be really measured around resources and what it takes for them to get to that very important conclusion of, do I want to do this or not? So what we create is a mutual evaluation plan. It literally says, hey, based on having gone through this with the largest companies on the planet, here are the steps that we know are necessary. We can typically get through that 45 to 60 days. That doesn't mean that companies will have gone through their approval process, but they'll know that this is the right fit within 45 to 60 days. Is this right? They might have to still go through a legal assessment and all those other things. But here's what's really exciting about it, right? They have, out of that experience, they have a quantified value proposition with a detailed business case and what are the sensitivities, okay? They have a clear understanding of what the integration requirements will be and how quickly they can get it done. And to be very clear, most of those are very, very light, right? So we've already integrated directly into Salesforce. We've already integrated into the top telephony platforms in the marketplace. All of those exist. So importantly, this is the most important thing, Andrew, and this is what I think all organizations should expect. Results within 90 days. Okay, so if that's implementation, integration, optimization, you should be seeing results in your business within 90 days.
Wow. Within 90 days. And what are the examples of ROI that you've seen with some of your deployments? So it can be really fast.
Well, listen, I mean, here's the thing with very valuable interactions, 30x the investment. And we're not talking about like just revenue increase. We've literally distilled it down to net contribution margin, right? So when we look at this, I've been blessed to have some really extraordinary business people on my team that can go through and build a very compelling business case, but they take into account and consideration exactly what is the time, energy, effort, investment from your team, our team, and then we can bring that back. But make no mistake, I mean, that one that I was talking about, $130 million of net contribution margin, that was on one application in 1 year.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So you think about these business scenarios. I think everybody could look at it and say, hey, if I've got attrition, and I'm going to challenge you, go look at the spreadsheet that you own. Just sit down and say, wait a minute, how many classes am I planning in a year? What's in my budget?
Yeah.
Then take it one step further and say, okay, if I'm planning for those people to be in classes, how many customers am I planning for them to engage with over the 90 days they're in their, or the 120 days they're in their proficiency curve? How much planned performance leakage? I saw, Andrew, a great quote from John Wooden, the great coach, and it resonated with me because I think about our platform in the context of a coach. And it said, failing to plan is planning to fail, right?
Yes.
And I thought to myself that the little nuance is, if your plan has planned failure in it, right? In other words, if you're planning to fail at the agent level, how do we improve that, right? So I think, the great John Wooden was way ahead of his time, but I think what we've got to look at, does our plan have planned failure in it, right? Does the plan have planned failure in it? Interesting concept.
I love that. That's a really good way to finish this, to put a bow on this thing. I'm really excited about the partnership and really excited about what you guys have built and where it's going next. I'd encourage for our partners and customers that are on this, if you want to learn more, give us a call. Check out cxbasecamp.com, and you can learn even more about XSELL and other solutions that we're bringing to market. But thank you again, Matt. This has been fantastic. I love getting inside. Anytime I can get inside your brain for a little bit is always fun. So any closing comment?
No, I would just say, Andrew, the one thing about where we're at right now and is, everybody thinks it's early. It's early. Let's see where this is going to go. The idea with what we've described here is you're early right up until you're late. Just get started with some project that's going to give you this growing pedigree of results that grow over time, right? That's the thing that I would just challenge everybody with is, get started doing the learning and building the results.
Yeah, you're early until you're late. That's great wisdom. Great wisdom. Excellent. Matt, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone. This will be on Basecamp shortly as well. Look forward to our conversations about XSELL and others. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andrew.